The Chicago Bulls have been reported as one of the many teams who have reached out to the Houston Rockets to acquire Cam Whitmore in a trade. Would acquiring the talented wing player be the exact move that the Chicago Bulls do need? We'll talk a little bit about that. Plus, the Bulls are apparently also shopping Lonzo Ball and hoping to get something back, which adds to the now growing mountain of players that the Bulls are more interested in moving this offseason. And Tom Thibodeau was fired, which has already triggered a lot of Bulls fans. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Derek Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all. And so the Chicago Bulls were mentioned in The Athletic, Kelly Iko, as one of the teams that are interested in acquiring Cam Whitmore, which is pretty interesting when you look at it, right? Cam Whitmore is a very talented player. He's a player that I like on potentially on this team, and he's a player that's kind of falling out of the rotation a little bit by the Houston Rockets. They play him, but it's kind of inconsistent minutes at inconsistent times. He hasn't outright requested a trade, according to The Athletic, but he would be open and willing to take a move. He's a second-year player. He's only played 2 years in the league so far, 6'7", 230 pounds. This guy's mainly defense, but he does have some upside offensively as well. You look at his rookie year in 2023-24, he did average 12 points, only 9 shots, right, which is really good efficiency, and that's solid enough for a role player. He shot the ball 35% in both of his years in the NBA so far, 35% from three, taking 4.1 three-pointers per game, which is solid enough number, not like huge volume, but solid enough when it comes down to it. And this is a guy that, 4 rebounds basically for his career, 3.5, 3 last year. And so he's a solid player, only 20 years old, has tremendous upside, and it would make a lot of sense for the Bulls to want to acquire a player like that. The Bulls who have wanted to acquire young players with some experience. Now, he doesn't have as much experience as some of the other young players that the Bulls have acquired, like a Josh Giddey, Jalen Smith. These are 2 young guys that do have tons of years and years of NBA experience. Cam Whitmore doesn't really have that, but I'll tell you this is a more low-cost potential acquisition and a better fit than potentially Jonathan Kuminga to this team. Now, some could say, well, Hayes, he doesn't necessarily have the upside of a Jonathan Kuminga either as a scorer. And I would say, yeah, you're probably right on that. I think that's a fair statement, but is he what the Bulls more so need, right? Keep in mind, the Bulls do need defense. And that is something that we're there. Now, Cam Whitmore reportedly he has expressed his displeasure with being at the end of the bench with that Houston Rockets team. So I think he's open to being out there. Now, he doesn't have much leverage. He's on a rookie scale deal. The Houston Rockets have not, for their credit, have not shown any big inclination on moving off of Cam Whitmore either. But you got to think that a team like the Chicago Bulls that's young, up and coming, that would have a role for Cam Whitmore as well. I know Kevin Huerter is there. I know, Ayo Dosunmu's here as well. Make no mistake about it. I think, both those guys can have a role for the Bulls. But Cam Whitmore, I look at him as a really good option next to Matas Buzelis. I think if you have a front court of Cam Whitmore and Matas Buzelis at the 3 and the 4, you have now a versatile 3-4 matchup, which is really kind of what, like I said many times, is what the NBA is really going to. When you look at the positions of Cam Whitmore over his career, it's really interesting. Last season, for example, he played 48% of his minutes at the 3, 48% of his minutes at the 4, right? A couple of 3% of his minutes at shooting guard and only 1% at center. So very small sample size there. Probably very specific lineups. And then in his rookie year, he was 60% at the 3 and 35% at the 4. So he can play either position. Him weighing 230 pounds, being a little bit more mobile, kind of feeds into that as well. Cam Whitmore just makes sense for the Chicago Bulls. It makes sense, right? He's averaged 10.8 points per game in only 17 minutes and over 98 games in his NBA career. Like, already, he's basically giving you P. Will production without P. Will minutes. I mean, that's the way, if you want to overly simplify it. He's a really solid defender as well, which is really good. That's what you want to look for. That's what the Bulls do need, and they reportedly covetous players that can play two-way players, two ways when it comes to it. Now, he does need some growth defensively. His per 36 minutes are great. But again, when a player hasn't played that many minutes, I don't really like to use per 36 for a player that hasn't at least played 26, 25-ish minutes. Averaging 17 minutes a game for his career, I don't like that, right? But he is a player that, his minutes went down from year one to year two. He came in his rookie year, 18 minutes, almost 19 minutes per game, closer to 20. His second year, only 16 minutes. So, that's something you got to look at for as well. Now, there's also questions about his availability. 51 games played last year, 47 played his rookie season. But Cam Whitmore is a player that I'm extremely intrigued by, potentially coming here to the Chicago Bulls. I think it would make a lot of sense. It would be a good use of their assets. He's a former first-round pick, being picked number 20. And I don't know what the asking price is. Again, the Houston Rockets have not necessarily shown a huge inclination to want to move Cam Whitmore. But I do think that when you look at things at base level, the Houston Rockets are probably going to dangle Cam Whitmore as part of a larger trade. I think his low salary makes a lot of sense for him to be part of a trade like that. So that there's that aspect of it. But if the Bulls can get him for some reason, $9 million at over 2 more years, that's not a big contract at all, right? That's a contract that's easily acquirable. So whether it's sending picks and some expiring salary, which maybe could entice the Houston Rockets, or if it is Lonzo Ball, plus, and it's not going to be Lonzo for Cam Whitmore straight up. You're probably going to have to send some seconds or something like that because of Cam Whitmore's youth and Lonzo Ball's injury history. But if you can get involved in talks to acquire Cam Whitmore, I love the potential of him. I think that he pairs with Giddey really well. When you look at his shot chart, a lot of his shots are all, mainly assisted, right? I like the fluidity in his shots. 35% of his shots come from above the break threes. 10 come from corner threes. So about 45 overall of his shots are three-pointers. He takes 8% of his shots mid-range, 30% of his shots in the restricted area, and 16% in the paint. That's where his shot distribution comes in at. And I like that distribution enough. And then when you look at it as well, most of his shots are assisted. 70% of his above the break threes are assisted. 100% of his corner threes are assisted, which means he knows how to play, move, and be the outlet man. 42% of his mid-range shots, and then 57% of his restricted area shots are assisted as well. So I think you have a nice little mix of playing up-tempo while attacking, also being able to hit threes as well. And I think that's a really good thing to look at when you're there. When he's in the paint, though, 78% of his shots are unassisted in the paint, and 57% are unassisted in mid-range as well. So he can find his own shot closer to the bucket as well. So I like that distribution. I think that fits in really well. And if you look at it now, is what the Bulls have to offer going to be what they want? The Bulls could dangle Kevin Huerter if they feel comfortable in like a Cam Whitmore, Ayo Dosunmu kind of fluctuating at that 3 with Modest playing a little bit of minutes there too. Julian Phillips could factor in there as well. So you have a little bit of that also. So I think the Bulls can put a respectable package together for Cam Whitmore if they decide to do so. It's just, what are the Houston Rockets' plans? Are they going to use Cam Whitmore in a larger trade to make an acquisition for a star to kind of fill out some salary and things like that? And if that's their plan, because we've heard that the Houston Rockets are not only interested in Giannis, but also Kevin Durant and even Kristaps Porzingis with Boston. They have their hands in a lot of potential trades that could go down this offseason, and Cam Whitmore could play a part into some of those, right? So it would have to be the right circumstances. But hearing that the Bulls have made that, or one of the teams that have made that call, again, this another thing that points towards AK being a little bit more active than what I think he gave himself credit for. Now, nobody's really going to give him any extra credit if he can't seal a deal and actually make a move, right? Because, we've heard a lot of rumors from the Bulls around the years, and not much has really come from many of them. But I think if AK were to make a move to bring in Cam Whitmore here and let him compete for a starting 3 spot, or at that point, if you're bringing him and Ayo Dosunmu off your bench as 2 versatile players that can play multiple positions, right? You're looking at almost 4 out of the 5 positions being covered by those 2 guys alone, and they can back up any of those roles. if you keep Io in those talks. But I like it. I like that a lot, honestly. So let me know what you guys think on the Bulls being reported as one of the teams to make a call on Cam Whitmore, and if something eventually gets done. Now, talked about AK being a little bit more aggressive than I think people were initially giving him credit for and thinking he was going to be coming into this. And that is now as well Lonzo Ball. So we heard yesterday that the Chicago Bulls are going to be shopping Lonzo Ball and seeing what his value is, that they have an interest there. And that's an interesting thing, right? Because you didn't have Lonzo at all. Now, the question is, and the question was raised in the original article pointing this out as well, is that why they signed Lonzo Ball and signed him to the contract that they did? A $10 million contract, which is easily movable, and it can be included in just about any other move that you make over the offseason if you need to do so. And, I don't like to give credit to AK too much for thinking ahead because he just hasn't done it a whole lot while he's been here with the Chicago Bulls. But if that's starting to change, right? And I keep saying if because we don't know. But if that is starting to change, hats off to AK. I think it's always easier to kind of be more flexible in making moves when you understand what you want to do, when you have your plan of what you want to do. And if the Bulls now have looked at this thing and, we talked about a couple of days ago, lining up Josh Giddey's contract extension to overlap with when Io is going to become available. If you're looking at all those things, then great, right? That's what really good front offices do. Now, moving Lonzo, I think, is going to be a tough sell. And so I'm not expecting Lonzo necessarily to be moved. Yes, he's a very productive player. And give him credit for that. I was recently on ESPN Los Angeles, where I was invited on the show, and we were talking about like the playoffs and things like that. And of course, they moved the conversation to, all right, Lonzo, how would he fit next to Luka? And could he be and so it seems like there are teams that are looking, if you're looking for a point guard and a cheap option until you find maybe your permanent point guard, it seems like some teams could look at Lonzo as that. We've heard that the Dallas Mavericks could be interested, earlier in this offseason now, the Los Angeles Lakers and things like that. So it's smart by the Bulls if they do have Lonzo available in those trade talks because he does have a cheap salary. He is very productive when he's on the court. But the question is how much is he going to be on the court? And that's going to affect the value that you can get for Lonzo Ball just because of he's not available a lot. He has not been available a lot. 70 games played in the last 4 years. That's going to be a tough sell for any team. And I think anybody who's looking at the Bulls getting some major asset back for Lonzo, unless he's just a player that they want to dump off and they really see the value in having Lonzo Ball while maybe saving some money on contracts, maybe that's what it is. But I think the Bulls are smart to exploring all their avenues because, Lonzo at this point, like he like I said, he's productive when he's on the court. But the question is how much is he going to be on the court? And then now who's he cutting into minutes for? And as that player that you're cutting minutes from to play Lonzo Ball, are they more shaped up to be part of the future? Are they more healthy overall? Can they play multiple positions? So it's those type of things. Like if the Bulls were to acquire Cam Whitmore, at that point, I'd be open to moving Lonzo Ball for what the best offer is. If you're keeping Io in that deal as well, it starts getting crowded at that point, right? So it's just all questions around. We'll see what happens ultimately when it comes down to it. But the Bulls seem to be, and AK seems, and I keep using that word seems, to be a little bit more aggressive than initially thought when he preached patience by the Bulls team. Like, let's just look at it. Now Lonzo Ball joins Nikola Vucevic as players that we've heard that the Bulls are not just listening to deals to, but they could be actively shopping. And that is a big difference, right? When you're listening to deals, you're basically saying, yeah, we'll listen to you if you call on it. We're not going to turn your call away, but we're not necessarily looking to move those guys unless it's a great offer. But that would seem like there's more intentionality behind making that move potentially. And so, that's something that you got to look out for. But, shopping Vooch, shopping Lonzo Ball, are they going to be able to move either one of these players that were supposed to be part of the core of the last version of the team that you built that didn't work out? They really are the last two remnants left of that. Caruso's already gone. Zach's gone. DeMar's gone. So if they are looking to move both Lonzo and Vooch a little bit more intentionally, that just shows that they've clearly moved on from that phase and they are ready to set anew. And so there's that. But then you also had yesterday, it came out that the Chicago Bulls could be looking to move Coby White if they re-sign Josh Giddey, and that only one of them is going to be able to stay. They're only looking to keep one of them and not re-sign him. We've talked about the reasons. We did kind of an emergency live stream once that news came out. But this kind of plays into some of the talks that we've heard, right? Some of the talks and conversations that we've heard around the Bulls maybe being more open and moving Coby than what they were at the trade deadline. Now, I've been very vocal on the fact that I want to see Coby White get a chance. If we were to move Coby White this offseason, for example, that would mean that we never had a situation in which Coby came into the same role that he had at the end of the prior season. At the next season, he never came back into that same role, and that's happened every year of his NBA career. And so it's really kind of hard to say, when people ask things like, well, is Coby capped out? The only reason that I hold out and saying not that is because of that role change that he's gone through every single year. But at the same time, if you do re-sign Coby White after re-signing Josh Giddey, you're looking at committing 65, close to $70 million potentially to a backcourt that hasn't accomplished nothing, and that may be why the Bulls don't, want to do that. But at the same time, don't you want to see? Don't you want to give an opportunity to see if these guys can replicate what they did at the end of last season at the start of the following season? But with Coby being an expiring contract, the Bulls don't have a lot of leeway. I've talked to you guys about it before, that there's more ways that it could hurt Coby's value than help it, right? Especially if he gets injured, if he starts off the season slow, anything like that. So you got to look at those things. You got to kind of survey those things as well. And that's going to be a tough thing for this Bulls team to do and look at. And it would suck if they have to move Coby, if they choose, because they don't have to. They have the money to keep everyone. But if they choose to move Coby under those circumstances, but this is a business, and I've said that before, and it is a business that you got to look and monitor things at and look at everything. And so we'll see. But I would not be surprised, again, not something that I'm hoping for, but I would not be surprised if the Bulls move Coby at the NBA draft. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe the Bulls do make at least one semi-decent size move during the draft, whether it be to move up, whether it be to acquire another pick somewhere, or whether it be to kind of make this roster make a little bit more sense. All those possibilities exist, and that would still be before they re-sign Josh Giddey, because you can't re-sign him until 5 days after the draft. So we'll see what happens there. Overall, we'll be watching it. If anything drops, we drop here at Chicago Bulls Central. You guys can let me know how you feel on that down below. Last topic before we get out of here. Tom Thibodeau was fired yesterday, which makes another coach that was fired that is a winning coach. Tom Thibodeau in the seasons in New York had one losing season. That was in 2021-22 when they went 37-45. Other than that, he's had almost a 60% win percentage as a coach of the New York Knicks. They just made the Eastern Conference Finals, right? And this is another team that makes a move that is not settling for mediocrity. They see an opportunity to make a move that can hopefully get their team to go a little bit further, and because of that, they're not afraid to change the head coach. And of course, that's gotten a lot of Bulls fans to the point of asking things like, well, what type of jobs? Billy Donovan is now the third longest tenured coach in the NBA right now. And that's despite his record dropping. Like, last year was the first year that his record did not drop since DeMar DeRozan joined the team, right? It stayed the same as the year prior to that. We didn't have a worse record than the year prior to that. But you've seen a lot of coaches with above 50%. Taylor Jenkins, Coach Budenholzer. Like, you've seen coaches with winning records removed, and mainly removed due to the teams just not settling and wanting something different, not being afraid to change things up. And then you have the Chicago Bulls that are so tied to Billy Donovan that it's like they don't even explore the options, right? When you look at some of the coaches that are out there, and Mike Malone, like Taylor Jenkins, who's a coach that's out there, now Tom Thibodeau, a coach that's out there, and the Bulls don't even consider potentially moving on from their coach that, people get, I give Billy Donovan credit to how he's adapted and changed the offense of the team. It's real. For people who say, well, I don't want to give Billy Donovan credit, he did it. And he did it intentionally. Changing the shot clock in training camp, that was all great. That showed being intentional about really wanting to change your play style. But even in that, we've still seen things where, like, Coby was made a jump shooter at the start of the season, right? Like those things happen. Even Modest Buzell is still, even though, he played pretty damn good after the All-Star break, 13 points per game after that, but, like, we still didn't run very many plays for him. Hopefully that changed going into next year. But it's like, it just puts it in perspective just how tied to mediocrity this front office has been. Because we haven't even heard that they are really, like, even when it was the Kentucky thing, right? It wasn't that the Bulls were going to move on from Billy Donovan. It was that they basically were waiting to see what Billy Donovan decided to do. So that was the most significant and real conversations that we've heard around Billy Donovan potentially not being the Chicago Bulls head coach. And that was just because of a situation that could have opened up that Billy could have taken that he decided to turn down. And Billy's never going to walk away from the Bulls. Would you walk away from having that level of job security? No, most people wouldn't. But, hey, Chicago Bulls, tied to that mediocrity. But I hope that Tom Thibodeau gets another job. I hope that with the win percentage that he has over his career and what he's been able to do over his career, that he gets another opportunity and shot. He has an almost 60% win percentage as his career as a head coach and almost 1,000 games coached. So we'll see what happens there, man. Shout out to Tom Thibodeau, and hopefully he finds him another job. He may take a year off, but I think he'll get another job eventually. Shout out to the New York Knicks for not settling. And we'll see what the future holds for those franchises and for the Chicago Bulls. But that's my time for today, guys. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything basketball, for everything Chicago Bulls related. That's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like we like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.